Thanks for tuning into this episode of FinTech Focus TV, powered by Harrington Starr, the global leaders in financial technology recruitment. Head over to the Harrington Starr website where you'll be able to find all the latest jobs in financial technology across the globe. You'll also be able to download the latest issue of the Financial Technologist magazine, including the Top 1% Workplace Awards. Finally, if you're looking to grow your team, please get in touch. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to another episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby Babb. And today I am absolutely delighted to bring you three of the judges from our Top 1% Workplace Awards that we did in 2023, back end of. We also spoke as a panel at FinTech Connect over at the Excel Centre at the back end of last year, and I thought it was so good that it deserved a bigger audience. So I am absolutely delighted to introduce you to Kate and two Davids, and we are going to be talking today about what makes a great workplace environment in the financial technology community. It is an esteemed panel. I'm going to get them to introduce themselves to you to kick it all off. Kate, let's start with you, please.
Sure. Thank you very much, Toby. Delighted to be here again, chatting to everyone. So I have been in financial services for about 25 years. Before that, completely different industry. You can still change industry irrespective of your age. And really building high-performing teams and making sure that you have people, passion and purpose. The alternative 3 Ps to those in marketing is kind of central and foremost for me in all that I do.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. On my screen, we're going to move on to the first of our Davids today, and Mr. David Williams. Fire away.
Hi, folks. Yeah, David here from EY. So I'm a partner in our banking capital markets technology practice. 18 years with EY. Started off life at Arthur Andersen. Then had the brilliant idea to go and join my client 4 years in, which is how I ended up working for a small oil and gas trading firm you may have heard of called Enron. And then spent 3 years at UBS running post-trade tech for listed derivatives, but then made the decision in 2005 to come back to consulting. So here I am today. Been a big believer in our talent agenda, particularly our junior talent. So I've done a lot of work around our graduates and apprentices. And yeah, delighted to be a judge again. Thank you for having us back, Toby and team, on the FinTech Workplace Awards. So yeah, looking forward to sharing some more insights.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And last but by no means least, Mr. David Harris.
Hi there. Thanks again for having me. So David Harris, I'm a partner at Baringa Partners. I've spent the last 16 years having the privilege of building out our financial services business and Baringa more broadly. Previous to that, I started my career with one of the big consulting houses. So I have, for my sins, spent the last 23, 24 years in consulting. But the thing that I'm most passionate about is genuinely being a great people leader and building a business that puts people first and creates the right environment for people to be the very best versions of themselves. And yeah, it's been brilliant to be part of that journey at Baringa, and I look forward to talking more about that.
Fantastic. And why I really enjoy having you three involved in this conversation, involved in the judging. This is for the Financial Technologist magazine every year. For the last 5-6 years, I think we've done the Top 1% Workplace Awards, is having people there who really care about doing this. And I think all of your businesses have been very committed to that. I know all of your careers have been very committed to creating and unlocking the secrets of having great workplaces. And in competitive environments, it's really important to do it. So each of you were given videos with founders or senior team members of these companies who put themselves forward for various different categories within the Top 1% Workplace Awards. And I sort of sit there and have the privilege and honor of speaking to some of these companies, and these people are super passionate about creating great environments. You guys get the very best of those to then judge and put into a ranking of order so we can see who the best of the best are. So I think all of us have come out of that and learned various bits and pieces from it and seen and been inspired by various different things. And all of you have done this process before with us. And I think we've all mentioned that this has been a year where we saw real change in terms of how people are thinking about this sort of stuff and moving it further forward. So I'll go around all of you and just say, look, if you're to grab a couple of the key themes from memory now, and I know it's going back a couple of months, but if we think of a few of the themes that you've seen and enjoyed over this year's judging, Kate, tell us some of the sort of highlights that you saw and what impressed you this year.
So one of the lovely things about all the candidates that came through this year, one of them had been shortlisted last year. And I love the fact that they really embraced all the feedback that they had been given. They didn't shy away from it. They didn't pretend it hadn't been said. They really said, okay, how do we do better with this? How do we work with the feedback that we've had and materially change the lever on those things that we can? And the result of that obviously meant they made it even further this year. But yeah, I was really impressed with the fact that they weren't just asking the question to be seen to ticking the box, but they asked the question with the expectation that they would get feedback and they would then act on it. Which I think a lot of companies, they ask the question, but they don't necessarily then act on it. So I was really delighted to see that.
I think that's a really important part of it, isn't it? It's very easy to sort of have tick boxes for these sort of things, but actually there where you're committed to making, not just to winning awards, but, so to speak, but also to making something better as a business, which is something that's really important.
Yeah.
And David Williams, what did you say?
Yeah, firstly, I think every year the quality of entries goes up and up, Toby. So it becomes even harder to judge the very best. A couple of things that stood out for me. One was around, or a theme that I noticed coming through a lot more, was around meaningful work and the real understanding that particularly younger people coming into the industry, they want to be stretched, they want to be given responsibility, and they want to be given that responsibility early with all the right support scaffolding around them. So there are a couple of firms that were doing that really well. And there's an emphasis there also on keeping the firm lean, not only because that's cost effective, but because there's a recognition that you can achieve an awful lot with a relatively small workforce. I thought that was an interesting concept. And the other point that was coming through was around sourcing, recognizing that the very best ideas don't just come from senior people, and that some great ideas can come from any level of the firm at any point in time, and just making sure you've got the mechanisms in place to be able to capture and act on those throughout. So that was a really powerful thing that came through as well.
I think those generational differences are quite stark, aren't they? And I think, I've heard a lot recently of people saying, oh, this generation of this generation of that, etc., etc. But I think it misses the point a lot, just to be able to point fingers at lazy and they don't do what we did, etc., etc. And actually, when you've got the companies there that are looking at how they unlock that, there's a huge amount of benefit that comes out. It's just different content delivered in different ways to create a different sort of piece. And as you said, those who are understanding the motivations of those things, I think, has been a really critical part of it. And David Harris, give us your thoughts.
So for me, I think what really stood out, and I agree with David, the quality of the submissions were brilliant. I think the bit that I was most attracted to when it came to sort of judging was hearing the passion from the very top and then understanding how that cascaded down through the business. So for me, it wasn't just, it wasn't just some of the CEOs or founders just talking about their product and the part of the market. It was around the purpose. It was around how critical it was around having the right team, the right talent within the organization. And then that flowing down to how do they get the best from that talent? How do they engage them? What's the role of the leadership to do that? How do they empower their teams? So the ones that scored highly for me were ones that really demonstrated that kind of thread of people criticality from the top all the way down through the organization and all the way back up again in terms of great listening were the ones that scored the most, and that stood out. Yeah, it was a step change this year compared to previous years in that sense.
Absolutely. And I think, look, you've touched on things there because we identified sort of 7 things which I think if we're talking about how to create a top 1% workplace in financial technology, there's sort of 7 things we pulled out as major themes that sort of came up with a number of the different entries and winners that we were speaking into it. You touched on it there, David, so I'm going to stick with you on this. And I know this is a big passion of yours, and you mentioned it at the very start when you're introducing yourself. I know it's a big part of the Baringa sort of ethos, which is creating those people-led cultures, or people-first cultures, I think you call it, don't you? So tell us a little bit about what that looks like and how you saw that manifesting through these entries.
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at Baringa sort of set itself up as a business back in 2000 by the founding partners with the objective to basically create a people-first business that had created a different experience for its people and also for its clients. So right from the outset as a business, Baringa said, right, how do we put people first? How do we have impact that lasts over time? And how do we give our consultants the very best place to be the best versions of themselves? So as a business over the last 24 years, we've absolutely put people right at the heart of the business. And the question isn't kind of how do we make more money, which geography do we go on, what type of clients do we serve? It always starts with what is it that our people want to do, what's right for our people, and then how do we leverage that in order to have the biggest impact with our clients and within the society that we serve. So putting people first and putting culture right at the heart of the business has been at the core of our strategy. It has been our strategy. And I've kind of loved in the submissions this year hearing where what firms have followed a similar track, and they've said, okay, we really do understand the importance of people and creating a culture that looks to attract and retain the best talent out there and have the biggest impact in the part of the market that they're serving. And I love kind of hearing some of the things that they're doing that we've spent the last 24 years being relentlessly focused on. And I think that's been great.
And I think it's just, you hear people led, or people first cultures sort of being bandied around, etc. And I think actually it's very interesting to see how people can actually implement that and what it actually means to implement that. Because again, it's one of those sort of things which you can see as a headline title of a book maybe, but you don't necessarily say, right, what does it actually mean to implement it? Kate, tell me a little bit about how you think that can actually be seen and live in an organization as a sort of people first culture.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think you're right. So many people use, buzzword bingo, and then refer to things like human capital when they're referencing the various efficiencies that they can make in their business, as opposed to actually what is motivating our staff, how are we motivating our staff? And it's a little bit like when various companies say that they're going to be, the client is at the heart of everything. Actually, that they may intend for that, but it's often not what ends up happening. So I think where people can truly look at their organization and say, we can materially measure that people are happier, our churn rates are lower, not because people feel that they're so rubbish they're unemployable, but we are a destination employer. You've got low churn, people are wanting to come and knocking down our doors and wanting to be engaged with us. It absolutely isn't about pool tables and ping pong opportunities. It really is about how are we thinking about building our individual colleagues' career paths? Are we offering them opportunities for stretch goals? Are we offering them opportunities to continue their professional development? Are we offering them opportunities through sort of volunteering and stuff that allows them to be engaged with very obviously sort of purposeful outcomes that they are personally aligned to as well? How are we engaging our staff, or are we just expecting them to turn up, crank the handle and keep going? Because I think when we look at the world of engineers, we know that the standard tenure of an engineer is 2 years.
18 months, I think, actually.
Is it 18 months? Okay, It's getting shorter. And with the sort of piece where we've got so many people applying for individual singular jobs, it really behoves us to make sure that we are really embracing all that they can be and lifting those individuals up to bring their talent, their passion, their purpose into our companies. Because, it is infectious. If you have someone who is sitting miserable in a corner, basically sort of swiveling in the chair every day, that is going to be as infectious as someone who bounces in a Tigger-like expression going, come on, we can do it. It's hard, but, we'll do jam donuts or whatever. And some of those things, they're incredibly trite, but that perpetual engagement and that willingness to go collectively kind of into the breach, I think, is invaluable.
Absolutely agree. And David, Williams, you've been nodding a lot through that.
Yeah, no, I was just reminded then, Kate. So I remember during the darkest days of the pandemic, where we're all confined to our studies and bedrooms to do our work. I think I was the beneficiary of some reverse mentoring. So there was a a director in our team who was the most insanely positive person that I think you could ever meet. And you know, sometimes you're a bit weary joining another conference call at 6:30 in the evening when you've been in back-to-back ones all day. You'd ask him how he was, and he would say he's extremely well. And he would just bring this sort of positivity, and he'd wake you up. He's quite a loud, gregarious, charismatic, he had a bit of Southern European flair about him. And he was just an amazing guy to work with. And I think one of the things it taught me was, your people look to you as the leader. And if they see you, a bit weary and a bit knackered, sure, that is you being genuine and authentic, but actually you've still got to put your game phase on a bit to keep the energy levels up. I was just reminded by that by Kate's story there.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I was going to say, I will always be the first one to sort of, relieve the tension with a quick game of Guess Who, the old school flip down one, or, do an Easter egg hunt at the beginning of a meeting at appropriate Easter-led times, or whatever it might be, Secret Santa. But I think sometimes people forget to bring joy with them. And life's hard and everybody's got their plates to spin, and a lot of them are first world problems, we'll all admit it, generally with our cohorts and peers. However, it is not a competition to see who's more miserable or more happy, but how do we alleviate some of that? And I think, David, to your point, we can all be authentic, but nobody wants Eeyore in the corner the whole time that says, oh my God, we're going to hell in a handcasket, it's awful. Actually, they are looking to you to say, it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. We're going to lean in. We're going to do this. We may have to pivot a few times, but, stay together, and we've got the goodwill and the collective energy to get there.
I think it's so important, that, isn't it? And sort of brings us nicely into our second part, which is about leadership. And certainly from doing the interviews, I sort of recognise the significant importance of communication, particularly when we're talking in sort of more hybrid and multinational sort of teams and businesses. The ability to build trust. We spoke about psychological safety at the event at the Excel, but that communication piece is important. Listening to what you're both saying there, that the old adage of the leader sets the pace of the team, I think, is incredibly important. But leadership was a key factor, I think, in those great workplaces. David Harris, talk to me about great leadership and how that sort of becomes a key ingredient in a top 1% workplace.
Yeah. I mean, I think it all starts with being a leader in a business. Any business is an absolute privilege, right? And it's a privilege to have that role, and you've got to take that responsibility that comes with it really seriously. I think it's really important. We are all authentic leaders. We show up, as our true selves, but also, you do have to at times kind of put the game face on, but not in an unauthentic way. I think the more authentic you can be as a leader, the better. But I think it starts at the top. The tone is set at the top, and I think creating a real clear direction in kind of where you want to go, I think, is absolutely critical for any business. It's certainly been at the heart of creating that people-centered culture at Baringa. So a clear sense of direction, and then really making sure you have the right people with the right capabilities, with a direction of where you're going to go, and then fully empower them to be everything that they can be. That, for me, I think, is the absolute key. I think empowering your teams off the back of setting a clear vision is key. Making sure people can kind of have the psychological safety to get the organization to where it wants to go in a way that's authentic to them. David, you said not all the best decisions and ideas come from the top, and they certainly don't. They come from engaging and then empowering the team to bring their ideas and thoughts and drive the business forward to best satisfy your clients, but also, make sure that you look after your people best that you can. So, yeah, that's some of my thoughts, Toby. I think it's a real privilege being a leader. With it comes big responsibility and a great opportunity just to empower the talent that you've got in the business.
Absolutely. And David Williams, I know you're a football man at heart as well there. And as I'm listening to this, I remember a conversation I went to listen to of Alex Ferguson talking about how his hobby after retirement was watching press conferences, and how the leaders would or the managers would come in there and create that sort of taking the pressure off the team and all that sort of stuff. And I think that communication piece there that Kate mentioned earlier on is there. So in all of your your Premier League wisdom and now I know Championship. Tell me a little bit about your view of leadership and what you actually saw around that as well.
Yeah, the point I was going to make was around, I think, as a leader, thinking very carefully around your audience and your channel of communication, your frequency of communication, your method of communication, and your tone of communication. I'm sure we've all seen plenty of examples where leaders think leadership is a 2-hour town hall with 80 slides in size 10 fonts and lots of charts and graphs, right? And you've lost the audience within about 10 minutes, and they're sort of clock watching. And one of the things that we've been sort of thinking really hard about is certainly in firms of the scale of ours, is to provide multiple different ways in which people can be led, right? Because what might work for Toby won't work for Kate, right? So just thinking about different settings, different channels. Some people really like the sort of the podcast idea or the webcast idea. Some just want to be able to read an email on the train and get the same sort of facts from it. Some value the in-person meetings. Some might be remote and might not be able to get to in-person meetings. So I think leaders have got to think about how they distribute leadership messages in the way that's going to be most impactful and relevant and customized for the people that they're leaving. Sorry, I didn't really give you a football answer to that.
It's fine. I was only grabbing it tenuously anyway.
Yeah, but as you know, the mighty Southampton have just broken their own club record of 21 games unbeaten. Actually, you look at the way Russell Martin speaks in post-match interviews. He's actually, going back to your point, he's incredibly humble, and he's always got the back of his team. But he will never ever do a press conference without referencing the needs and the ability to improve. So 3 things I can certainly take away from him.
There you go.
Yeah, got it in there.
Who knew we were going to have that sort of benefit today?
Yeah, kind of leaning into that sporting analogy, I think also when you communicate with your team, irrespective of the outcome, I think we see this a lot in sport. People say, oh, we had a great team, great performance, but it just wasn't ours on the day. There are things that are within our ken, if you like. They're within our sort of remit of influence, and there are things that are not. I mean, you can perform incredibly well on the day and deliver everything 100%, but maybe the other team just had a better day. They outplayed you. Whether you turned up and had a bad day or a great day, you were never going to win. But to sit there and say, actually, we played out of our boots, today, it just wasn't ours in the moment. That's okay. And to sit there and, another day we played exactly the same way and we won by 25 goals. I think if you can encourage your people to look at the performance rather than the outcome, the outcome will invariably lead in the direction you want it to. The performance is the thing that you have the real power of persuasion over. Are we staying with sport? Are we eating well? Are we sleeping well? Are we turning up for training? Are we doing the things that are required? Tick, 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 tick. Yes, we are. Are we working as a team? Are we all on the same page? Do we know what the direction of travel is? Do we know what the play is that we want to implement? If you guys, if your team is doing all of that and they truly believe in all of those things, on occasion, the outcome is not going to be what you would have ideally wanted, but your performance is going to be consistent and extraordinary, and trying to keep people focused on the value of the performance and everything that went into it and how people engaged through that process. I think if we can focus on that rather than necessarily always the outcome. I would thought, by the way, David, you were going to say Portsmouth had a 21 losing streak, which shows how much I know about football.
Well, that might also be true.
Switching in from Portsmouth to Southampton's a cardinal sin for David as well. So we'll move back to the business as part of it. It's my fault for going off this. And Kate, I wanted to speak to you specifically on the leadership piece about something which I know you're incredibly passionate about as well, which is the psychological safety piece. And I've heard you speak really eloquently about this in the past. I know it's a matter that's sort of subject, very, very close to your heart as well. The leaders who I was speaking to who understood that, and it comes back down to as well taking the pressure off the result and onto the performance, which people feel they can control more. That seems to be a really important part of it, and I know it's important to you as well, right?
100%. And again, I think we've had the conversation that says if it's only one or two people in your team who feel able to speak up, not overthink things before they engage. I mean, definitely take foot out of mouth, but not have to overthink or sort of worry about too much contextual stuff. They can just say what they mean what they say, and move on from that. If it's just one or two people, then that's not psychological safety. That's just a couple of chums that you get on with really well in your team. Until everybody in your team feels that they are able to have a voice, that they are included. And it's not even that they have a voice, that they have a voice with equal weight in the discussion. Because equally, don't ask everybody what they think and then ignore. I'm a bit like the people that we were talking about at the beginning. Don't ask people how they want to engage with their work and then ignore what they have to say. Don't ask your people in your team to express an opinion, have a thought, get engaged, and then ignore it. You have to give everybody equal space at the table to have that voice, to be equally heard, to be equally considered, and to have the feedback loops that says, this is why maybe this isn't the occasion for that particular thing, or this is why it's not going to fly this particular time, but, you know, thank you very much. The more people feel that they can get involved, get engaged without having to double check themselves, while still obviously being polite and considerate and all those sort of human standards that we have and how we engage naturally, then that's super important, because actually that's when the little bits of magic happen, and people are joining up all the dots in the room and kind of going, you know, I heard of this, or let's bring this person in, and everybody all of a sudden is flying as opposed to inching for the door.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sort of ties into the something there where I think where people are looking at that, it's about giving people the tools and the ability to move further forward and get better at their job when you're talking about that, without the sort of fear of moving backwards. And that comes into our third piece, which is about learning and development. And I know that you guys have all spent a lot of time thinking about this and thinking about how we can bring the best out of our people. We've spoken about sort of generational differences and how people are communicated in different ways, as David was talking about earlier on. David Harris, talk to us a little bit about the significance of learning and development in a great workplace.
Yeah, I mean, you can't ever stop learning, right? You can't ever stop developing. I think that's the key. I think one of the things that, you know, we've certainly we've put at the heart of our people strategy is that listening organization, that development construct. Always give people feedback, constantly listen to each other. Feedback's an absolute gift. And then with that feedback, do with it what you will. But quite often it serves to be a great opportunity for you for individuals to learn and to develop, and, you know, go and get access to the multitude of different content that's out there to help you learn. We've all seen through our careers the waves of kind of learning in classrooms, to doing it all via PC, to the hybrid learning that happens, the constant learning that you have at your fingertips on your mobile phone as you're commuting into the office and as you're sat on the sofa. I mean, we're constantly plugged into content. I think as an organisation, Baringa, we've been really mindful around what are all those different vehicles and avenues for people to access content and learning and development opportunities. But it does start from really each individual understanding what they want to and what they need to learn and develop around. So people being really honest around their learning needs, being really clear around it, and then understanding what they can tap into to progress on that learning and development area. But learning and development, it's a massive topic. We're all constantly consuming content and learning and developing. But I think it needs to be done in a structured way, but also balanced with some of the informal learning that we've all got access to now.
And David, I know you've done a lot around this at EY as well, particularly with the work you've done with people coming through the organisation. I think you've got a really interesting take on this, right?
Well, the point I was going to make was around, you touched on generational differences earlier, and the younger people coming into our organisation today, I think they're going to be, they've never done any different, right? So they're constantly trying to learn and to evolve and keep pace with the technology that's coming through. Those of us that are a little bit more vintage, shall we say, you know, we grew up in a world where you went to university, you did your 3 or 4 year degree, And you might have thought at the time that that'll kind of be largely enough to sort of, you can amortize that over a 40-year working life, right? And anyone who works in and around technology will know that is complete nonsense now, and that we're going to have to continuously reskill ourselves, almost every year. I think you're going to get to a point now with the pace of change that it's a continuous, always on activity. So I think equipping a workforce to be able to do that. And I think there's then a mixture of, there's so much content out there, as David was alluding to, and many firms, you can sign up relatively economically to all you can eat online academies for anything that you like. But it's balancing that between online web-based learning and doing badges and all that sort of stuff versus the highly personalized content that's classroom delivered or in person delivered. I'll give you an example of that, Toby. So we've and this might touch on some of your diversity points, one of your other pillars, but we've been looking very hard at our mid-level female technologists, and they're technically absolutely outstanding. They've got access to all the technical training that they lead. We had a bit of a gap in terms of the leadership training, because as a graduate you get loads of training, as you get to near partner you get loads of extra attention, but it's those sort of mid-levels which also happen to be peak attrition, particularly for our female technologists. And we've created a program based on some of the leading US business schools. It's case method learning, it's scenario based, it's all based on real life content that as a management consultant you will grapple with day to day. And the group discussed the material as a group. We've got some facilitators who have got some of the experiential answers they've got. We've got special subject matter experts and guests that come in as well and intervene. And the feedback we've had from that is it's just one of the best training programs I've ever been on. And I think it's about that balance. Again, getting back to that point, different channels, different audiences, different mediums. It's getting that right and getting it proportionate and customized.
That's an important pillar that you move into there with the diversity aspect. And the next piece that we talked about was actually the significance of diverse teams. And companies, I think this year notably, were recognizing that and talking about how, and this is diversity of ethnicity, sexuality, whatever it may be, even thought that came into it, that created teams there that recognize that, or businesses that recognize that diverse teams are winning teams. Kate, I know you've been in the thick of this for a lot of your career and focused on it a lot as well. Talk to us about the sort of power of diversity as a superpower for a great workplace environment.
Oh, I think fundamentally, particularly if you're working in technology and fintech, if you are trying to deliver solutions for a large remit of people, if the people in the room delivering those solutions and shaping those solutions don't look and smell and feel like the audience that you're wishing to engage with, then whatever you deliver on is not going to be fit for purpose across that full construct. So 100% you need the same people in the room and at the same mix that you are expecting to engage with from an output perspective. I think one of the things that people underestimate is they all sort of embrace the idea of, we get that it's good for the bottom line, we get that it's good for that expansive creative thinking as you sort of expand as you go through that creative piece. But it's much harder to have a room full of diverse personalities, education, structures, backgrounds. If you've got people with dyslexia, ADHD, autism, the way in which any one of us uses language, be that verbal or body language, the way we hear things. I've had deaf colleagues before who've been in the room, as much as we talk about delivering inclusive activities, how many times do you actually see someone who's British Sign Language on the stage with the people? They maybe have surtitles at the top of a stage when that's happening. But one of the things I hadn't realized until I had a deaf colleague is that British Sign Language is not constructed the same way as English language, the standard written language. So actually I said, oh, is it like giving someone sort of French rather than English if it's written up? Because I just assumed foolishly if it was written and that was enough, that would be inclusive to some degree. And they said, no, it's worse than that. You may as well give them a page of Cantonese. The construct of the language is entirely different. So just writing it down is not enough. And And so one of those things that says, actually, we definitely all see the value of it, but working with it, embracing it, and finding a way to really bring forth the magic that it can deliver, it's quite hard. It's much easier to sit in a room either of nodding dogs or people who more or less did much the same thing and use much the same language. And yet it's fascinating when you can have a broad mix of people who bring that sort of kaleidoscope of experience and knowledge and thinking to whatever it is that you're doing as a process towards your outcome. So sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, it sort of harks back to listening, which has been a key theme, actually. If we're looking at every single one of the pillars so far, I think having this conversation again here has just sort of made me realize once more that actually, a people first culture, a great workplace. So often, if you look at what we've covered so far, learning and development, diversity, leadership and communication, trust, psychological safety. So much of it comes down to the individualization of things and listening to it. So I'm conscious that we're working to a hard stop. So I'm going to speed things up a little bit now as we move into the sort of fifth pillar of this, which is the sort of, something there which we've seen as a big theme returning. We've seen a lot of pressure on businesses to come back in 4 or 5 days a week. I think, if you looked at the height of the pandemic, it's we're in a remote world now. The genie's out the bottle. Everyone's going to be back this, and then suddenly there's this sort of clamour in 2023 to with pressure on margins for people to get back into the office and do all this sort of thing. It's really interesting to look at the dynamics of office culture and getting hybrid right. David Harris, I know this is something that we've had conversations about at various different phases, and is there a right or wrong or an indifferent answer? What we've got is that, again, people are being authentic to that and saying this is what we do and listening to people. Tell me your thoughts on what makes a great office culture and how people can take some of the lessons that we picked up from that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk a bit about making a great office culture, but to your point around just the working practices, it's really complicated now. I don't think there is a right answer. If you look at Baringa, where we work, we are empowering our teams to come up with the right combination between working on client site, being in the Baringa office, working with their Baringa colleagues, and time at home. And we're not going to be more specific than that. I think every client and situation for us, we're a client service business, means that the answer is going to be different depending on all of the local dynamics of a client and your team makeup and personal circumstance. I think what we do know, though, is doing a job, but being at work is more than just doing the work. It's a social activity as well, and we're strong believers in you're going to learn more or differently if you add sitting alongside your colleagues, sitting alongside your clients, supporting them in their development conversations, having fun, having a laugh at work, and doing things around work as well. We think are a really important component. So our perspective is actually the blend and the hybrid across clients being in the office with Baringa folk and being at home is really, really important. That's the strongest combination somewhere between that than it is being completely on your own. Now, that works in the type of work that we do. I appreciate there's variations for other roles and jobs across different organizations, but we strongly believe, to be a people first and be a cultural, to be a great differentiator in our culture, we've got to spend time with each other and learn from each other and have that knock-on impact of what it's like to work in Baringa and to have fun, to have fun at work. There's more to life than just work, right? So a lot of that comes through spending time together.
I think that sort of black and white era of saying, right, the office is the office, and it's 5 days a week has given an opportunity for people to thrive. And does it have to be one extreme or the other? I don't think so. I think it's about, again, tailoring and putting the right things into it. Let's move on to the sixth piece. And David Williams, you spoke about this and touched on it earlier about the sort of niche and specific teams of highly skilled people. Netflix did this after the .com bubble and realized they could be a lot more productive and efficient by having smaller, high value teams. One of the things that we talk about when we're talking to the best candidates is sometimes they're sat there and they're looking left and right at them and finding that there's no one who they're learning from. When we talk to technologists, they want to be involved in highly skilled, complex problems, and learning from people there who are their heroes, who are sat next and around them. That talent density makes a great workplace, I think, from what we've seen and what we're talking about. Give me your insight from that sort of comment you made earlier on it as well.
Actually, what I was before I do tell, I was going to pick up another one of David's points. The other thing I think you miss with remote working is around spontaneity and the accidental collisions. And actually, that kind of ties into your question, which is when you have talent density that is co-located, the sparks and the sort of synapses join together in a way that they don't if you're all completely remote. So I think it is good to have some physical proximity, not 100% of the time, but I think there's definitely an argument for that.
We're going to finish off with the seventh piece there of managing, and this has been a theme that we've been running all the way through here, which is managing different people and managing different generations within it. And I'm going to leave Kate to lead us home here. Talk to me a little bit about the significance of that and what you saw from some of those companies and what you've seen actually in your career about the people who get that right and why it helps create that great environment too.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we touched on it earlier about sort of the opportunity to do reverse mentoring, whether it's sort of inadvertently or not, with the younger people teaching the sort of more mature people the different ways of thinking or approaching. I think if I take it from a post-pandemic perspective specifically, one of the phrases that lots of people flagged on me, we're all in the same boat. It's like, no, we're all in the same storm. We're in very different boats. So, and I think David Harris mentioned earlier, whether when we're remote, we're dialing in from the bedroom or the study or whatever. I think one of the things that became crystal clear through pandemic is that you had younger members of staff who were literally dialing in from their bedroom, and they had basically whole office, not invited back to their flat, invited back to their bedroom. And there was no respite from the office. I don't know about work-life blend. It was just kind of, where does work and life sort of stop or blend or anything else? One of the lovely things in terms of coming back to the office and having those intergenerational pieces is not only do we get to think about, are we doing deep work? We're actually being at home, completely undisturbed. We don't have opportunities for spontaneity with people dropping past your desk and having a chat or any of those things. It's really useful. On the flip side, when we're trying to do highly engaged, interactive, sparky sort of conversations, ideation activities in technology, actually the best thing to do is in person. And I think what we're seeing here is like the difference between when we're in person at the FinTech Connect event or when we're on video. And it is very different. And it's kind of, I describe it as the difference between going to a concert and watching the concert on video. You had the same experience as the people in the concert hall, but you also didn't. You didn't come out with your ears ringing and your chest vibrating. And I think sometimes we forget about that sort of deep additional level of things. In a post-pandemic world, also, when we've got the younger people and cost of living crisis, they may well want to come into the office more often. They don't want to sit in their bedroom necessarily with the laptop up doing this all day. They want to come in, have a free coffee, grab a lunch with someone, sit in the warm, and then head home at the end of the day and sort of have that curtail to it. Whereas others of us, maybe we do have a study, maybe we do have child commitments, elderly parents commitments, we want to learn a different language, whatever it might be. It allows you to sort of manage that balance a bit more and be very intentional about, well, am I in because I'm doing collaborative work, or am I at home because I'm doing deep focused work? And I think for me and the teams that I've been engaged with and what I've been seeing around me has been around that piece that says, why are we in each of these spaces and what is the work to be done? And are we in the best place to execute and perform for that piece of work, which has been fantastic.
Absolutely. I think it's a really exciting sort of phase that we go in now to sort of take all these various bits and pieces. David Harris, I know you spoke about 1,000 silver pellets as the sort of key to, this isn't one golden strike that makes a great workplace. It's a lot of different things. So I think we've got time just to do this, to go around the room and just give one, if you're looking at one silver pellet that you would give as a piece of advice, a golden piece of advice to a company there who are looking to create a great workplace in 2024, moving across to it, who are maybe going into this year's awards and wanting to be recognised in it, but more importantly, looking to create that great environment. What would that silver piece of advice that you give to it, that silver pellet of advice that you give to someone in that situation? So I'll start with you, David Harris.
Yeah, so I'm going to dodge the question slightly because I think it's 1,000 silver pellets,
There you
right?
go.
I think
thought you might.
this is all about understanding that we've just spoke about 7 of the things on this call today, but they're interrelated. I
Yeah.
think if you're going to ask me to kind of, to go down to kind of one really important thing, I think one of the most important things for us to do is to genuinely listen to each other, walk in other people's shoes, and just try and create an environment where your people can be the best versions of themselves, work together in service of that client or business outcome that you're setting out to achieve.
I love that whole program that you've done recently at the team over at Baringa, talking about be kind as well and looking at kindness through leadership too.
Be kind, be curious, and be great at work. Yeah.
There you go. Not a bad combo. David Williams, your silver pellet.
I'll give you a couple actually. So I think it is about giving people really meaningful work, stretching them in doing so, providing the scaffolding in place to support them, and then also removing friction, because nothing drives me around the bend more than friction in life and in work and everything else.
And certain phraseology I know from personal experience as well, but that's a whole nother story. And last but not least, put the cherry on the cake for us, Kate.
Yeah, sure. I would come back to doubling down on the curiosity. Be curious about whether your people are experiencing joy in their day. Be curious about behaviors that seem out of whack. Don't go in with an assumption. Really active listening and curiosity, and then look at how you apply that or not, and have that two-way conversation.
There we go. So you've heard it from the experts. It's an easy lifelong play to get after to make a great workplace. And I'm so excited to be involved in this whole project and looking forward to already to the end of this year where we'll be doing the same thing again. To Kate, to the Davids, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for all your time that you've invested into all of this, and being on the stage and then rehashing it now. I hope it's of real value to companies that are looking to do that and looking to invest in their people and looking to make those people first cultures that are so important to business results at the end of it. So thank you all for watching. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you soon on another episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Toby.
Thanks, Toby.